My name is Karen Glick, and I'm the author of Questions in the Silence. Today I'm on a virtual book tour, and my stop is Literally Speaking. I want to thank people at Literally Speaking for hosting me. They've provided me with some questions they'd like me to answer. The first question is, can you tell us a little of what your book is about? Questions in the Silence is the story of a young woman, Ari Rothman, who is born with some very special skills. She has visions and dreams that help her make her day-to-day decisions. As Ari grows up, she really feels strongly that she wants to help people around her and decides to become a clinical therapist in order to help people better. The interesting parts of the book occur when she tries to combine her natural, intuitive talents with the clinical training that she's receiving in order to help the patients that come to see her. The second question is, would you say Ari is a very strong woman? And if so, what makes her that way? Emotionally speaking, Ari is a very strong woman. She has a definite sense of her own values. She knows what's right and wrong for her. The interesting part is that she doesn't impose that sense of right and wrong on other people who come to her with their problems. And I think that ability to listen to other people in a non-judgmental way is what makes her a good therapist. And I think that's going to draw people into the whole process of what therapy is about and how we're actually helped through psychotherapy. At the same time, Ari goes through some of her own trials and tribulations as well. You know, she's a little bit of a dork, she's a little bit of an outsider, she's kind of shy, and she has to establish her own relationships with her boyfriend, interacting with her parents as an adult, and also tending to her clients as well. And I think her journey through life is something that all of us can identify. We'll all find scenes in the book that we can go, yeah, I remember feeling that there were some awkward moments with my parents as I was growing up too, and I can really find myself in Ari's struggle. The third question is, what was your favorite part about writing Questions in the Silence? That's easy. Whenever I start to write, I start with sketches of my main characters. As soon as I wrote a sketch of the character Ari, I was off and running. I really found that she was a great voice for a lot of the things that I'm concerned about in my life, and I think that most of us are concerned about. How do we live a life that has meaning? How do we serve the people around us? How do we make sense of the things that happen to us and the relationships that we form? So all of that really was off and running as soon as I got to know Ari, and the other characters in the book followed along. Each one of them added a different flavor to the book, a different set of complications, and a different set of interesting facts. So those were my favorite parts, the characters. The next question is, what was the hardest part to write? And for me, the hardest part of anything is saying goodbye, so the ending was the most difficult part. It was hard to determine when was a good time to say that, okay, Ari is beginning to resolve both her own issues and the issues of her clients, so we can bring the book to a close. I think the only way I allowed myself to finish the book was by saying, well, you know, I can always revisit this character, Ari, 10, 15 years later in her life to see what happens to her both as a psychotherapist and as a member of her own family. The next question is, if you could say your book had an underlying message, what would that be? I think the underlying message is that each of us is trying to find a meaningful way to live, and that most meaningful way comes about in the connections we form with other people. And Ari shows us one way that those connections can be formed. As we walk away from the book, we have to make our own connections and our own meaning. The next question is, what was the most challenging part about being an indie author? The most challenging part for me is learning how to reach out to you, the reader. I'm becoming much more familiar with using various tools of the internet. You can find me twittering. My Twitter name is ToffeeLit, and I also have a Facebook page for Questions in the Silence. as well as a website. My website is bellalunavoicecompany.com. Uh, Learning a lot about these different venues for getting my message out there has been challenging for me, but I've also enjoyed it at the same time. The next question is, what is the best part about being an indie author? Well, the best part is kind of the other side of the coin. Since the internet is so intricate to all of our lives today, it's much easier to find out what people feel about my book after reading it. And I really do enjoy connecting directly with readers. So for those of you who decide to read Questions in the Silence, please feel free to contact me. I would love to have a dialogue with you about your own feelings about the book. The next question is, for fun, let's say you won a Pulitzer Prize for Questions in the Silence. Who would you thank? There are so many people to thank, but the primary people for me to thank would be a procession of family members. When I was a little girl, maybe 8 or 9 years old, I already loved to write little stories. And I had an aunt, my Aunt Joan, who worked for Random House at the time. And when she would come to visit, she would take her time to sit with me at the table, read my latest story, and give me some feedback and encouragement. And that had such a tremendous impact on my development. It gave me such self-esteem about the fact that an adult would take the time to read what I'd written and talk to me about it. And that was like the first step of my path to becoming a writer. As I've gotten older, other members of my family, my parents, my husband, my 4 children, have all carried the torch of reading and giving me feedback about my writing, and that's been invaluable to me. The next question is, what's next for you, Karen? What's next, I hope, is a lifetime of continued writing. I've already started some work on a second novel. It's kind of in an embryonic phase at this point. It doesn't even have a title, but it's going to be dealing with mother and daughter issues. So far, I have 2 main characters that I'm working with. One of them is a middle-aged mom who's a telephone psychic, and she helps a lot of people with consultations over the phone. And I think what's going to happen in the book is that at some point she's going to have to use her psychic powers to help her adult daughter. A second character is a young woman who is a corporate lawyer, and she's struggling to balance the demands of having a high-powered career with bringing up a little baby. So that's what I'm working on currently. I think also in the future I'm considering writing a sequel to Questions in the Silence. Some of my readers have contacted me and asked, well, what's going to happen to Ari 10, 15 years from now? And I think I may just have to revisit Ari, and I think I would enjoy that as well. Thanks again for visiting with me today, and thank you to Literally Speaking for sponsoring this stop. You can purchase a copy of Questions in the Silence on Amazon.com. It's available both in paperback and in Kindle formats. It is also available in Smashwords.com on some of the other formats for electronic readers. I have a Facebook page for Questions in the Silence, and you can reach me at Twitter. My name again is Toffee Lit at that site. Thanks so much for spending time with me, and I look forward to hearing from you.